good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the new edition of our Masterclass Raising Champions from Talent to Title, which is organized by International School Chess Federation with a framework of World Youth Chess Championship 2026 here in Montesilvano. So this series is dedicated to understanding how raw talent is shaped into chess excellence and how champions are guided, trained, inspired along their journey. And today we are honored to host representatives of chess who will share their experience at the highest level of the game. And please let me introduce our speaker today, Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan from India. He's a FIDE trainer with extensive international coaching experience, and he has served as a coach of the national teams of Brazil, Mauritius, Eritrea, and the India sub-junior team. Helping develop players at all levels of competition. As well, he's the founder of Chess Gaja, a global chess academy active in more than 40 countries. He has played a significant role in promoting chess education and talent development worldwide. Hello, Priyad. Thank you for
Hello.
joining us today.
Thanks for having me today. Thanks for the introduction. Hello.
Mhm.
Hello
Okay,
to all the participants on
thank
the
you.
seminar today. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's start. We will be having a very interactive session. So we will start with the questions that we have prepared. And if you will have any questions from the audience, then we will let them ask you. So the first question, young players often show strength in different areas at different stages of the development. From your experience, what skills matter more at young age? Calculation, understanding, or mindset?
So what I've noticed, because I worked with players who are absolute beginners all the way, them coming to 2200, 2300, and so on in FIDE rating, and all the age ranges as well, when players are 4 years old or even when they are 15 or even adults and so on. Mainly, I think for young players, it's the mindset. I think that's the key, and mindset not just of the players but also of the parents of the players. I think that's also plays an equally crucial role. The reason being, like, chess calculation or understanding of the game or any part of the technical aspect of the game that can be taught is can be covered at any given point in time, but the mindset aspect of it is something it's not that easy to teach. You have to, like, some of it is like, naturally that comes with the player, the characteristic of a player. And if someone has a very like a very fixed or a rigid mindset, it might be a bit tough to explain certain concepts to the player and explain, okay, these things you are doing right or you're not doing right, and so on. The major thing what I have always noticed is the players or the students who are very flexible to learn, like they are ready to listen to the coaches, and the parents are also ready to listen to the trainers. And even if the kid is not, let's say, like extremely talented, but if the kid does have the correct mindset to listen and then to experiment their game and so on, they definitely show, let's say 300 or a 400 rating point increase in 2 years or 3 years time frame. So if they are, let's say, 1800, and in 2 years, 3 years, the players who I have consistently seen reach 2200 or from 1000 to 1500 in terms of chess strength, all of them had a very similar pattern, I would say, where they were curious to learn and they had the right mindset to listen to what the trainers were saying and then trying to kind of like implement it in their game. So from a parent perspective, what I've seen as parents, they should be that, like, more of a guiding force for the players. They should kind of explain, okay, why the trainer or the coach is, like, mentioning to follow a certain method of chess, instead of, like, immediately expecting a result. Because what I see is many times, as parents, within 1 month or 2 months, they want a result the moment the kid starts learning or training and so on. Chess is a very long-term learning process. So short-term results is, I would say, very tough to generate, but you should always evaluate from, I would say, a 6-month time frame in terms of results as parents whenever you work with any coach. Yeah, that's my answer. I hope you could hear me clearly. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Could you hear me the whole time? I was,
No. Okay, now I can hear you. Sorry. Okay. So
yeah,
moving to the next topic.
yeah.
The foundations built in early years often shape a player's, let's say, long-term relationship with chess. What should be the core focus of chess trainings, let's say in the first 5 to 8 years?
It would be extensively working in middle games and end games. That should be the core area, along with kind of creating a good work ethic. So not to get distracted and kind of, a very deep understanding of especially end games and like very good middle game understanding. The opening part, I think, has really a value only when a player, let's say, crosses around 1800 FIDE rating. So up to that point in time, should a player not work at opening at all? That's not what I would say. What I'm trying to say is in opening stages, the player should constantly go through a trial and error process. So they should play a line, they should maybe make some mistake, they might lose a few games, then they go back, fix whatever the mistake, then again improve the line, the opening they play step by step. So they don't memorize any long variation of opening or anything, but spend all their energy primarily working on middle game and end game. And once they have a very strong, like understanding of middle games and end games, and when they cross, let's say 1800 FIDE or slightly higher than that, then they should try to have a very fixed opening repertoire, the lines that they like to play. At that point, they should make a clear decision. Am I going to be a 1d4 player or am I going to be a 1e4 player? Till then, they should go through this trial and error process. And I think the core focus in the whole thing would be to not just try to like go for some like easy traps and tactics and try to score wins here and there, but focus on building a strong foundation and again once again aiming for a long term result. I think that's the key for creating champions in the long run. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now, many coaches struggle to balance discipline study with keeping the game enjoyable and inspiring for their students. How do you think how you should balance structured learning with curiosity and creativity, especially with the young players?
So kids are naturally curious. They have very high, amounts of creativity as well. So if we look from a chess game perspective, end game is very structured because the theory of end game is kind of very well mapped out in most scenarios. But opening is an area where there is a lot of scope to keep kids curious and creative. So that is why in the previous question, as I was mentioning, let the kids play whatever opening they want to play. Like, let them have all their creativity and curiosity, kind of like in that aspect of it. So what I've always seen many a times is like the openings that a student play would literally be the same as what the trainer would have played when they were playing the game. So the trainer would teach the same opening that the trainer would have played to the student, and the student would literally be playing the same opening repertoire. But what I do when I work with my students personally or in the academy, I tell them like here are like 4 or 5 options in opening so that you can choose this or this or this or this, like 4 to 5 options. And then I tell them, I'll give them like 1 or 2 weeks and I'll tell them go play some, training games online. See which opening kind of suits your creativity, which makes you curious, which opening kind of makes you, enjoy the opening phase of the game. This is especially I'm talking for players, let's say rated around 1500, 1600 or above, and so on. And then, 1 or 2 weeks later, they come back and they are like, this opening I played, but I never got a position that I really like to play. But on other hand, there's a different opening where, I really felt like I understood the opening. I could really try different things and so on. So I would like to choose this opening. So here you are giving them that space to experiment, test their curiosity and also creativity in the opening phase. Whereas in end games, there is not much scope for curiosity or creativity. You have to execute what is the right move, even if it's a boring move, kind of thing. So this is how I would strongly look at it. Because as a coach, if we tell the student you exactly have to play, let's say a random opening like Rai Lopez, you have to play Rai Lopez, irrespective of you are being an aggressive player or a positional player, the student or the player might not really like, imagine if the player wants to play something quite closed position in nature. They may not like, openings in certain openings. But if the coach tells them this is the only opening you have to play, then kind of we kill the curiosity there as the player, if the player wants to experiment and so on. So give them the space in the opening part to be curious and creative, and kind of like structured part would be end game, and middle game is, I think, a fine balance. It has its own spaces for curiosity, it has its spaces for like structured learning. So for example, if you're teaching, if a student is learning something about pawn structure, it's, I think, fairly structured. But if you're talking about something of a dynamic potential of a game, it has a lot of space for curiosity and creativity. So this is how, I would balance the learning aspects of curiosity, creativity, and structure. Yeah.
Continuing the topic about, let's say, this learning system with the students. So, which is logical, every student learns differently, and effective coaching often requires, let's say, flexibility and an adaptation. As an educator, how do you adapt training for different learning styles of the students?
So the learning style of most kids in current generation is, I think, fairly similar. They spend most of their time learning online, be it in terms of videos or be it in terms of courses or online playing platforms, puzzle solving, and so on. So this is like a fairly, I think, standardized template I generally see when I discuss with the students. But the way I approach it is, most of the times, is the first few lessons whenever I have with any student, whatever rating they might be, I first generally like, try to understand what was their existing learning pattern. How did they learn chess? And like, what was the training routine they followed earlier? So this takes like at least 2 to 3 classes for me to get a good understanding. Are they more of a learning via books, or have they learned most of their knowledge via videos or courses? And are they having a fine balance between, books and online material, training material? And also, additionally, I pay careful attention to what they learn online, because every online learning method makes a small difference, I would say, if it's a YouTube learning content compared to a structured learning course and so on. So I try to understand this information completely in depth in the first few lessons I work with any student. And once I understand that, I could try to, like, kind of customize my approach to the student in such a way that I don't immediately kind of disrupt their existing learning pattern, but make minor changes, like small changes here and there, here and there. So first, that they're comfortable, and that they also kind of like, build that belief that, they are learning and that they are improving, so that I make those minor tweaks, nothing drastic to start. And what I've seen often is, like, most players, especially if they are rated around 1500 to 2000, or even like, let's say online ratings of 1000 on platforms, as I said, their existing learning pattern would be very, very like a dopamine driven, I would say. So they would do a lot of puzzle solving. Maybe if they have 2 hours every day to, like, learn chess, maybe 1.5 hours would be spent on puzzle solving, and another 30 minutes would be spent playing chess online. And this is all their learning pattern would be for majority of the students I've interacted with and I worked with. So what I tell them is like, okay, so if you are so stuck to puzzle solving, then I suggest them, how about there are websites where you could do like blindfold puzzle solving, which makes it more difficult for them to solve the same study or same puzzle. And at the same time, they are still in their puzzle solving mode, because when you just try to make moves on the puzzle online puzzle board and try to solve it immediately, it's more of a dopamine driven. You're just trying to get that, feeling I solved something. But the moment you make it slightly harder, asking them to solve it in the blindfold mode of puzzles online, there they get to do the same existing thing, but also do the learning in the process and so on. Similarly, as I was mentioning, most learning these days happen via online in, let's say YouTube or some courses. I tell them, okay, so if you would like to learn, reduce the time you learn on YouTube of certain channels, because most learning or content in YouTube or general online platforms is generally more entertainment driven, more than the education driven. So, many parents would be thinking like, my kid is learning 2 hours online, but why is he not like improving? Like, why he spends so much time watching chess videos? Why is he not improving? And then when we ask them, okay, like, what do you do? The kid would be like, I just play a video and just sit and watch for 2 hours. Like, that's really not like, that's more like an entertainment. It's like watching a movie. So I tell them, okay, so if you watch the same exact video again, you need to pause the video in many moments of learning and ask yourself a lot of questions. Make it more like a question driven. Ask yourself the question, like what I would play here. And then I would ask the player itself, you itself should answer or try to answer the question. So if you watch, let's say, a 20-minute content on online platform, it should take you at least like 1 hour to finish that 20 minutes. It should not just be 20 minutes of play and move on to the next video. 20 minutes of video should take you 1 hour, because that 40 minutes is where you're interacting with that content, trying to ask yourself questions and trying to find the answers to those chess questions that you ask. So if a player makes these minor tweaks to their existing learning habits, however it could be, and these minor changes on whatever learning style that they already have, I think the student would also not feel like they are moving away, very far away from their existing learning style. But at the same time, as a coach, I also manage to reach my objective, that the kid or the student manages to learn something when they are interacting with chess videos or solving chess puzzles. So if they do this, I feel like it works the best for both the student, and also the coach here.
Thank you. And now switching to a little bit different topic, since we were talking more about individual students. So chess cultures and development systems vary greatly from country to country, let's say. So based on your experience coaching various national teams, how do development paths differ worldwide?
As I come from India, which has one of the strongest chess ecosystem right now, and I've also spent about 6 years of my time in the US. So I've seen the chess ecosystem, how it's over there, and also having trained the teams of Brazil and chess Olympiads and Mauritius and Eritrea. What I've noticed is the Indian chess ecosystem and how it's mainly works is that the students are like very determined. They really want to achieve whatever the goal is, and most of the time the goal is to become a world champion or to become a grandmaster. So like it's a very high goal they start with. It's a very competitive mindset when they start. And but whereas, that I think is also a bit of a cultural thing, because when I've spend time interacting with students from United States and so on, they generally take the aspect slightly more relaxed, slightly more chill on how they approach learning and how they want to balance, let's say, chess and their education and their other extracurricular activities and so on. But from an Indian context, the developmental path would be like, like when you are, let's say, 4 years old or 5 years old, you learn the basics. And by the time you are 7 or 8, you should, try to have a FIDE rating. And then, like it's a very competitive mindset. And as the ecosystem is built around competition there, you get to generate or create a lot of young talents, identify them early on, and they go on to become very strong titled players and so on. On the other hand, I have had the experience to work with countries where there is very limited chess exposure. For example, countries like Mauritius or Eritrea, where the chess ecosystem is very limited. Maybe the highest rated player in these countries would be someone around 1800 or 1900 FIDE rating, and so on. So in these countries, the way they approach chess is more of a hobby in most scenarios, and but they really do want to, like, whenever they come for a learning session, especially I got to work with their Olympiad teams of Mauritius and Eritrea. So whenever we have a Olympiad training session, all of them would attend, and they're passionate about learning. The only difference is that they, like, even if they have the passion, they do not have the continuous structured guidance, which is kind of what many times they are lacking. So a training of 20 hours of 30 hours could help them just for that Olympiad tournament in most scenarios. But whereas in a country like India or US, what happens is training happens throughout the year, 365 days. The student is interacting with a coach at least once a week or twice a week, or even much further, like let's say like a boot camp of 10 hours of intense training with the trainer in a month or something of that sort. So this is how the development paths differ worldwide, I would say. I believe that the best development path to create very, strong talents and titled players is the student should be willing to spend at least, I would say, 15 hours of chess every week. The student should be able to spend outside of their other activities and so on. So 15 hours if the student manages to spend every week on chess, it could be chess training, or it could be, let's say, like individual study without a coach. If they can spend 15 hours every week consistently and manage to play, let's say, two tournaments a month at least, and that would help. And one kind of a interesting pattern I have always noticed is the players who go on to become very big talents at a very young age. Let's say they beat a grandmaster at the age of 9 or 10 or 11, or someone who becomes a titled player like an FM or an IM at the age of 10 or 11. And what I've noticed is they play a lot of over the board tournament games. They play more or less like every weekend they go play in some tournament, or they play like every like once in every 2 weeks, every fortnight they go and play a tournament. So this excessive tournament play combined with continuous learning helps players to improve at a very rapid pace. And both like this kind of a tournament exposure is there in countries like India, because if you want to play a weekend tournament, there's always a possibility to play in India. And the same thing I've always seen, I've also seen it in countries like the US. There's always a weekend activity, like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday tournament, 5 rounds or a 7 round tournament. So because of this particular, like path, constant playing combined with, spending time with the coach helps a student to progress from, let's say, a talent to a champion in a matter of 4 to 5 years time frame, or six, slightly longer time frame. Yeah.
Since we touched this topic about how turning, like from junior cadet to a professional, So the transition from a successful junior player to a professional competitor, I think, can be one of the most challenging stages in the chess career of all players. How do you guide students through this, let's say, critical transition phase, let's say junior or it's a cadet till professional?
So this transition from junior to professional involves a lot of like think mindset and like approach, like how the approach differs. Because when someone moves from junior to professional, like a lot of time they plateau at a particular rating for let's say a 6 months or 1 year time frame, and then there would be maybe a loss of motivation and the drive to learn chess. That those kind of things happen. And also as from a junior to a professional, they are getting growing up as a teenager from a young or like a child, like let's say 8, 10, 12. Now they're moving towards a teenage, so the age also brings some natural distractions for the player along with that. So I think it's the mindset is, I think, the crucial thing, where as a coach or as a trainer, the students require the guidance. And in most of these scenarios, it's about like as a trainer, I would share what I experienced when I went through the same plateaus, or when I transitioned, let's say, from a junior to a professional player, and like purely from experience, and explain to them that, let's say, the plateau in their chess rating or whatever, some unique problems that they are facing in their chess improvement is not something really unique to them, but it's common for everyone who has gone through that phase to go on to become a titled player, a grandmaster, or a professional player. That it's a common thing, and every player, it's kind of like they have to go through that phase. And so on. So two examples which I can clearly think about is that I was working with a student who is about 2100 rated player, and I think he was about 11 years old or 12. And he was stuck in that 2100 FIDE rating range for quite some time. And then I just told him, like, how about we try switching your opening from 1d4 to 1e4? And it would take, let's say, 4 to 6 months of time and effort for you to learn and transition from 1d4 to 1e4 player. And the primary reason why I suggested that to this player was because I understood that the player is very good in playing positional chess, but was not so good in playing dynamic or more open positions. So I suggested this, and but before the suggestion, we tried a few other alternates as well in that 6 months time frame. It did not work out. So then we said, okay, let's try this. I think it will work out. And the parent was also willing to commit that, let's say, the 4 to 6 months, and the student was also ready to take that time to transition from 1d4 to 1e4. And just as we completed the transition, let's say in 4 to 6 months, the player was confident and was able to play 1e4 in his games. He broke through from 2100 to 2200 in that, like in the few months right after he transitioned from 1d4 to 1e4. So I don't think because he switched openings, he became like from 2100 to 2200. But the fact that he managed to now understand the game in a much deeper way, because he understood completely new set of positions, helped him to transition from, let's say, 2100 to 2200, which I think is a much more serious range of it. And another thing is around from a junior to professional is where, the opponent, the ones you face, they put much better, like defense when you have an advantage. They fight back and they don't give up that easily. So that is also like kind of a mindset thing, because generally most players are used to, once they get an advantage, they'll be able to convert their advantage and win the game in a much easy fashion. But once you go from the junior to professional, exactly that's where your opponents are going to put the maximum resistance and not give up that easily. So you need to improve as a player your advantage conversion skills and so on. And like this, like how the example I was mentioning about this one player from whom we switched from 1d4 to 1e4, I went with a completely different approach with another student of mine who's like rated around 1800 or so. And so this is a young player from Singapore. And uh, we noticed, or I noticed when I was in training the player, that it would maybe he would do extremely well if he focuses on endgame. And then what I told the parent is like for about 4 to 6 months, once again, it's the same, the 4 to 6 months time frame. Let's purely work on the player's end game skills. Let's only practice end games in classes or at home. Let the player only practice end game. And at the end of 6 months, the player went on to play Singapore Under 11 Nationals, and he went on to become a champion of the tournament. And that 6 months, the player did face some problems in his openings occasionally, middle game skills. But the player had the belief that if I do work on my end games in an extensive manner, it is going to give me results. And the player was willing to put that effort. The parent was willing to support it. And as a trainer, I, shared all the end game resources that should work for the player. So when the transition, let's say a casual player to a serious player, or from a junior to a professional, it is mainly explaining from the trainer's own example, from their own life, the issues they faced, and how they overcome, or how by their interaction with other trainers and their friends, the examples giving the player the belief that the problem can be overcome, and that they can become a professional player. It is not that tough as it seems to be. And constantly supporting the player, even if they do go through kind of like a tough period in terms of rating or performance, and bringing their confidence up so that they become a professional player in the long run.
Thank you. Okay, so we're at the final two topics that I would like to discuss. This will not be practical about chess, a little bit more different. As we know, chess teaches much more than moves on the board, and can have, let's say, lasting impact on personal growth. In your opinion, how can chess be used to build resilience and emotional intelligence?
Any sport, not just chess, has this wonderful thing called losing a game. Especially sports has this wonderful thing that, it's either a win, draw, or a loss. As a youngster or a young player or a kid, in no other aspect of, let's say, in education and all, you don't face the aspect of losing. It doesn't happen much there. But in chess or any sport, you lose a lot. Like if you play a tournament of like 9 rounds, you may even lose 3 games or 4 games or even more. So chess, I would say, is like a reflection of life. So the moment you make a mistake, you get to a bad position, and it might even lead to losing the game. And so every time you lose, you have only a limited time. So for example, if you lose a game tonight and you have to come back tomorrow morning to play again your next turn, right? You have to forget the loss overnight and come and face the chessboard again the next day morning. This kind of opportunity, is what basically builds resilience. So when you constantly lose, when you constantly kind of go back and like reflect on what or why you lost, and kind of learn from it and come back again, and next day you're also, you're ready to face a game, and who knows, that game also maybe you might end up losing that game. But that, I think, is very, very the key factor of chess. It helps you build resilience as at a very young age, which I think most other extracurricular activities may not have that kind of competition, or constant possibility to lose and learn from it. And in terms of emotional intelligence and so on, many a times, if we are playing against someone on chess, especially if we can see their emotions, what they reflect on the board, we may change our decision accordingly on the moves that we play. So, for example, if I notice that my opponent is very stressed out on the board, I would try to complicate the game even further because I notice that my opponent is stressed out. But in case if my opponent is very calm and quiet and very focused on the board, I might not play the move that complicates the position, but I might instead choose an option that is more solid and more stable on the board. So this kind of things, minor cues that we pick up based on how we look at our opponents, facial reactions, how they react when we play a move, or when how we react when they surprise us. These are minor things that we get to develop as a young player itself, as chess players, right? So we always tell players to have a very poker face, or like something where you don't really show your emotions very publicly to the opponent. You just kind of keep a very calm emotion on the board so that your opponent cannot really guess what you're thinking, and so on. And I think another fantastic thing about chess, especially in tournaments like this World Youth and all, is that at a very young age, the players get to interact with people from across the world, and they learn and they pick up these social cues, different cultural contexts, and all of it. And chess makes all of that happen. And those cultural cues that a young player picks up early on, it really helps them as they grow and become older as an adult, and so on. So that is how I really think chess builds resilience and emotional intelligence. And I think chess is one of those unique sports, especially as it's an individual sport. In a team sport, maybe a loss would be would be approached differently compared to an individual sport. So an individual sport, you fully own up to the kind of a loss. That is, you can't really shift the blame of losing to someone else, and that ends up building a lot of resilience. And another thing that connected to, I would say, one of the previous questions, how this would connect, is that players who go on to become extremely strong, they look at losses more from a perspective of like, okay, I lost, let me take the takeaway or learning from it and move on, without like kind of like worrying too much about it. I think many players, they take losses sometimes poorly. They react very in a manner where they would not be able to focus on their next game. But the young players who go on to become very strong at chess, they take the losses with a perspective of learning. Okay, I lost this game, so now I analyze it so that I don't repeat the same mistake. And that way they build resilience, and also at the same time they are fixing their chess weaknesses and improving as a player there.
Great. And now the last question, a little bit, let's say, in the same direction as the previous one. Since I know your background a little bit, so many parents and educators, I think they're interested in the broader benefits that chess can offer, let's say, beyond competition. How can chess support academic success and leadership skills?
So a bit about my educational background. So I think it would add context to the answer. So I did up to my high schooling in India, and then I moved to the US to do my undergraduate and master's degree. So I did my undergraduate in marketing and master's in management and leadership. And the 6 years that I spent in the US, 4 years for undergraduate and 2 years for master's, it was on chess scholarship. So I managed to get like chess scholarship because I was a titled player when I moved to do my undergraduate degree. And it really like the 6 years where I balanced chess and also balanced my studies, because many players or parents have this fear like you have to do only one thing. You can't do both, like education or chess. Many times they have this kind of dilemma, like where should I focus? So when I went to the US in 2012, I was an international master with a rating of about 2420 FIDE. And by the time I completed my undergraduate degree, which was 4 years in 2016, I was rated 25, slightly above 2500, and I also had completed all the three Grandmaster norms. So I managed to get like close to near perfect GPA. I think I finished my undergraduate with a GPA of 3.95 out of 4. And so in that 4 years, I got a fantastic degree, undergrad degree, and also I managed to increase about like 80 to 90 rating points and make three Grandmaster norms there and become a grandmaster, transition from international master to grandmaster. So I think it's always about like priority. So if you decide that, okay, I have to get a very good academic degree and also I want to reach my chess goals, you obviously prioritize those areas of it, and then you work towards your chess goals. And I always, whenever a chess parent or a chess player comes and asks me like, should I sacrifice chess for education or education for chess? I tell them, please do balance both. That from my personal perspective, I always tell them to balance things, not to give up one for the other, because the skills that you pick up uh, from chess and the skills that you pick up from education will complement very well as the player goes on to become an adult and so on. So I think it's crucial that the players have a balance of chess and academics. And the major thing why chess helps academics, I feel, is that chess players can easily get into this state of flow, which is like this hyper focus. The moment they sit in front of a chessboard, they don't get distracted. Same way, they can get into that state of flow very easily the moment they study anything in academic. So if there is some educational content they have to learn, if a normal person would take, let's say, 1 hour to study that material to take a test, a chess player would be able to do it most likely in 20 minutes or 30 minutes because they won't get distracted. So this way, you manage to get your academics also, like very well sorted, and can get very good grades, high grade, like high marks in your exams and so on. And that is what I would say in terms of chess and academics. And in terms of chess and leadership skills, so now that I run my own online academy, which is also a private limited company, which is registered out of India, where we train kids and adults across the world. Like we've so far trained in about 45 countries. Most of the leadership skills that I've picked up, some of it does come from education because I do have the educational background of business background that I studied in college. But how chess helps me in the leadership skills, what I've noticed this often in chess, we always prioritize, like, centralizing your pieces, giving them fantastic squares to, like better coordination. We always say wins than material. We always place priority in chess for stronger coordinated, side over a side with, let's say, more pieces on the board, but with no coordination. So same way, I think in leadership, business is all about coordination. You need to coordinate with the people, with the process, and with the different people you work with. And I think chess teaches you coordination so good that you can definitely apply that as a leader in terms of coordinating with people and process. And another thing is like, chess also teaches you a lot about, let's say, if a knight is in the center of the board, the value that it commands is completely different from, let's say, a knight on the edge of the board. A knight on d5 is the same 3 points, but is valued much higher according to the position compared to, let's say, a knight that's on a8 or h8 or a1 or h1, where the scope of the knight is much, like, lower. So here you kind of like try to understand the context. So the same value of a piece, but it changes according to the context or the nature of the scenario you are working with. In a leadership or in business or however, the same scenario applies on a daily basis. I strongly believe in that. Like the same person you interact with, they might they have the good days, they have bad days, and so on. So you kind of work with them according to how on that particular day they are working with, and the context matters a lot. And I've kind of done some workshops like this with, let's say, the area where I'm right now from. I've done some like chess and business kind of leadership seminars, and I would explain these things to them. So these would be business leaders with no prior chess experience or very limited chess knowledge. And the moment I explain these two contexts, especially the coordination and how the context matters, they it's something like kind of like sparks in their mind when I talk about it. And they're like, I ask like even if I interact with them a month later, they would be like, those 2 points like resonated a lot with me. I'm trying to try to use it as part of my own leadership skills, and so on. So that is where I think chess has really helped me personally in terms of academic and leadership, understanding context of a situation. Every context is different, and also coordination always beats, even if the opponent has a lot more material, but disoriented pieces can be beaten. If you have a very coordinated set of pawns and pieces, you can beat your opponent. And also, I think it works in terms of leadership as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Priyad. We covered for now the topics that we really wanted to hear the opinion of you. Now, does the audience have any questions? Maybe can you speak up, and then if he doesn't hear, then I will just no.
A question about what if he gets a student there that is not his foundation is not so good. What is his method of fixing his knowledge? Destroying and erasing everything and start from the beginning, or based on not very strong foundations, try to fix it?
Priyad, could you hear the question, or I have to say it? Okay.
Can you repeat it? I couldn't hear
I
it
have
very
to say
clearly.
it. So the question was, what if the student has a very bad, let's say, can you repeat the first part of the question?
What if the foundation is not solid?
What if the foundation of the student is not solid?
What is method?
What is the method to improve it? Like, do you destroy the one that they totally had and you start like from the scratch, or maybe you have another method? That's the question.
It's those kind of players are very tough to kind of like, help them improve, because you have to kind of like, you have to make them forget whatever, the methods they have learned. And you need to make them train all over again in most scenarios. So as I said, imagine if a player, all the training up to that point was only, let's say, puzzle solving. They have not studied anything about end games or anything about it. What you have to do is should tell the player, let's say, like, let's say 10 or 20% of your time, let's do some end game or opening. You still do your 80% of your time, go and do what you are used to doing. Just kind of like a small portion of your time. Now start spending on the other aspects that you as a trainer want the student to learn. And once the student gets comfortable with that kind of, let's say, a pattern, then again, let's say the 20% of the time should become 30% of what you want to ask the student to learn. So it's a fairly, slow process, I would say. It's kind of the tough process, I would say. That is why, especially in the academy which I run, we also have a lot of, coaches who teach young kids and they move up the levels. So we place emphasis to those coaches to tell them, like, do not teach them a lot of silly traps. Please don't do that. It kind of like they might progress very fast at the starting of their career, but the plateau, the moment they hit, let's say, like 1200 online rating or 1300, is going to be a much longer phase. So we tell the coaches who work with foundation, building the foundation of a player to do the right thing, like focus on the long-term improvement of the player and don't work on short-term rating improvements, because short-term improvement many a times hampers long-term growth. It kind of stops them from growing long-term. Because what happens is, from a player mindset, imagine a player wins a lot of games due to some easy traps, and then they struggle to use the same traps to beat, let's say, much stronger opponents. They become more and more frustrated the moment at that point in time. So the player starts to lose their confidence also a lot at that point in time. So it's kind of like, you as a trainer now, you would have to keep the confidence as well, kind of at a stable level, and also have to rechange their thinking habits. I have personally seen students who are very skilled, but with, let's say, like training habits which they don't want to change. They just are like, they want to stick to their existing training habits forever, and they get stuck, and the talent kind of goes wasted. So as a trainer, you have to do gradual changes. You cannot go and do a drastic change, because if you try to do a drastic change, unless the player or the parent is willing to cooperate, the student is going to most likely hate you if you're a trainer. And most likely they will go back to their comfort zone, whatever that is. And it's not going to be beneficial for the player. Or maybe they'll just go to another coach who is more comfortable for them in their own existing pattern, but that's not going to help the player. So gradual changes for players with, let's say, poor foundation is needed. And as a coach, you should have patience and make those tiny, tiny changes and bring them to the way how you want to train them as a student. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Since we have a time limitation, that will be only one question from the audience. Thank you very much. Riyad, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you joining us and supporting our initiative. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me today in the session. It was great talking, on the International School Federation's initiative, and great to interact, and the question, answer the questions and queries. And I hope all the participants have some takeaways that they could implement either as a parent or as a coach or as a player, and get better at their chess journey. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.